Right, so we're recording this session now, sharing our memories of Watto, who has passed 12 months ago last December. Ian Watto Watson. Peter Gendra, would you like to kick off with your memory?
Okay. For those who don't know Ian, that's him. He was a truck driver, instructor, trainer. He founded Shed Happens about 17 years ago, and I became great mates with him. And a great thing about Watto was that he trusted my opinion. He'd ring me to ask me things about Shed or just life in general. But the greatest thing he did for me was to encourage me to write a letter to each of my children asking for their forgiveness. This came out of a father-son night at a Shed night, and he asked guys in the audience if they had a great relationship with their kids. And when my hand went up, he said, "Could your relationship be any better?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, were you harsh on your kids when you were bringing them up?" I said, "Yeah, pretty harsh." He said, "Well, why don't you write a letter to your kids and ask for their forgiveness for that rough treatment they copped when they were teens?" So I did that, and it really improved the relationship with all my kids. They rang me back to thank me. They forgave me. We now always say, "I love you," when there's a phone call. Quick one now for the end of Watto. When he shifted his truck driver training business to a new spot, he was going through chemo because he had prostate cancer, and he rang me to ask about setting up lighting in this new place and the audio system and where we'd put the stage. And he said, "Look, I'm so disappointed. I'm too crook to be there. I hope it'll go okay." I said, "Ian, when you coached the AFL football team that you coached for about 10 years, did you run on the field with your players?" He said, "No, coach doesn't run on the field." I said, "Right, well, with Shed Night, some guys will buy the food, some guys will organise the interviews, and some guys will cook the food, and Shed will happen whether you're there or not." And he said, "Thanks, Peter. I needed to hear that."
I moved Townsville up here, and I was more or less by myself away from the Shed team, but I was really glad that Watto and a few guys come up and helped us out up here on the first day. You got those photos, Simon? He really made me feel still part of the crew that I wasn't, even though I wasn't part of the Shed crew on Malumba Downs. And even when I was down there, I used to go there, and he still made me feel welcome, even though he was still chatting to other people. He just didn't come up to you, didn't come up to everyone, but he just acknowledged that we were there, and that was quite good. I've been to some places where they've just someone's here, so and so's here. Why not? Why? You don't worry about them. But he does the encouraging just by giving you a little wave or something like that, which was good. That's me.
Right, now, I have written a few words about Watto. Watto, what a mountain of a man you was. You encouraged so many. By your spirit-led wisdom, it just flowed so natural. Being led by the Spirit, and so blessed were we who heard you. Before your God, he called your home. Rest in peace, my brother. And he encouraged me so much. And with my speech problem, he just said to me, "Just keep going." And as he blessed me, he just blessed so many others.
Yeah, I met Watto 8 years ago, and he seemed like an instant mate, and that's what other blokes have said. You know, he really believed in men. He really believed in men, and he saw the good in men. And we went through a real hard time now 8 years ago, just after I met him. But he'd ring me sometimes every day to see how I was going and encourage me. And he kept on saying, "You'll be right, mate. You'll be back up there in no time. Don't you worry." And he's a great guy. But what I wanted to say about Watto, what was really amazing about him is that he really loved Rachel and the kids too. like my wife and children, and he really took an interest in them, which I really appreciated about the man. That he so he was great with men and men's ministry, and got a lot of blokes on track, you know. But that's what he did. Probably hundreds, if not thousands of guys he touched, and he got them on track. But, you know, for my wife to, about 5 years ago, he visited Alice Springs, and he said, oh, I'd love to see Rachel. It's just too far. He always wanted to come to our farm, but he never got there. And he said, oh, tell her to come down and we'll have breakfast. So Rachel put our 4 kids, I was already down in Alice Springs at a shed. Rachel drove 370 k's down to Alice Springs to have breakfast with Watto, and then hopped in the car and drove home again. So she drove me 750 k's to have breakfast with Watto and the kids, and yeah, but he made all the kids feel welcome. He was like a grandfather to them too, you know. And yeah, I miss him a lot. And last night I was really wanting to be out and run my downs that shed because of all the rain. It just was not wise to head down there. But I was really sad I didn't get there last night. But it's good that we could share the stories tonight. And yeah, I miss him a lot. He was a great guy. And yeah, if we can all just take something of Watto and encourage other blokes, you know. Encourage is to summarise what Watto. He encouraged every bloke to be who God intended them to be. That's what Watto was about. Watto was about encouraging every bloke to be all that God intended them to be. Get rid of the crap from the past, the things that are around your heart, the rocks in your heart. And it was really, he wouldn't use the word identity, but really it was finding our identity in God and finding that purpose that God has for us. Yeah. Thanks, guys. And hopefully we can continue to encourage each other all around this nation. Thanks, guys.
I didn't know Watto until about 4 years ago. I knew of him, but I'd never met him personally. I knew he had a shed down at his truck yard, but it was of no interest to me. But then I went into some very bad depression. Nearly ended up in a psychiatric ward. It was not going well at all. I was rolled up in the corner, having panic attacks and goodness knows what else. That had been going on for a month or so. And then my wife said to me one day, we're going down to see Watto. And I said, no, we're not. I don't want to see him. And she said, you've got nothing to say on the matter. Get in the car because I'm taking you down to see Watto. And she basically scruffed me behind the neck. She threw me in the back of the car and she took me down to Watto, down to his truck yard. And this was about, I don't know, probably towards dinner time. On the way down, I was praying that Watto wouldn't be there. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to see anybody. Anyway, when we got there, we pulled up. Watto walked out and Helen had a few words to him and he came over to me and I got out of the car and he gave me a hug that changed my life. Because it wasn't just a, how are you, mate, hug. It was a hug that said, you're special. It was a hug that said, I care about you. It was a hug that said, there's better days ahead, if you understand what I mean. And from that day on, for the next 3 months, he took me under his wing. And when he went out to other sheds right around, well, Queensland, bus trips, he would pick me up and he would personally encourage me and take me with him. And for 3 months, he just ministered to me. And that was the beginning, I believe, of my coming out of my depression. And just quickly, the other thing was that my wife had a very close attachment to him because Watto had been through a lot of things. He'd been battling his cancer for many years. He'd been through a lot of different sorts of treatment. He'd been to have ray treatment, injections, all sorts of things, and my wife had been down the same boat. And so there was a very close attachment between my wife and Watto. And we went to see Watto just before he passed away. And that was a very special moment, because when we walked in, he just held out his hand to my wife and he pulled her in close and he just gave her a hug. And my wife hugged him back. And it was like he was drawing strength from my wife, if you understand what I mean. My wife had been to that situation, but he knew he was going to pass away. But he just grabbed my wife and he hung on for grim death. And it was just a very special moment. And but Watto changed my life, and I'm so thankful that I met him, even though I didn't want to do it for a start. But he changed my life, and I believe that he certainly was. It was the beginning of me coming out of a very bad depression, and he got me involved with Shed, and I'm so thankful for that. I know I've met a lot of blokes now, and there's a number of them on here tonight. Peter and Alan and Phil and quite a number of other fellas, not only with Shed, but in Champion Blokes here tonight. And I'm so thankful that was Watto that pulled me into this. And it's just been, even in the last 12 months with all the COVID, it's just been a blessing. It's just been a great blessing. So, Watto, what a great man. He could make you feel special. Even in a room full of blokes, he'd make you feel special. So thank you, Watto. That's it, mate.
Watto was a special bloke. He was, as Robert said, he'd put his arms around you and give you a genuine hug. And most of his texts that were sent was so unusual, because he always finished it with "Love, Watto." What an unusual thing for a bloke to send a bloke is signing off with "Love, Watto." And it was true. He loved us all, loved every bloke that he met. He wanted to be part of your life, and he wanted you to be part of his, and such a special bloke. And I've known Watto for almost 15 years, and I've been through some good times with him and some bad times, but he'd ring you up one day and said, "Come on, Al, we're going on a trip," and I'm at work, Watto, but he'd convince you all of a sudden just to get in that car and go for a drive with him, and he seemed to always know when a bloke needed a bit of Watto love, a special bloke, and you could tell, when he passed, that we had thousands of blokes and ladies chime in and view his memorial. It was one of the biggest memorials that I've ever seen in my life, and that just shows how much he reached out around this country, and so many people loved him for the champion that he was. I'm going to leave it there, fellas. Cheers.
I first met Watto at a big shed thing at Wollongong, near Warrnambool, Horsham. And after hearing him speak for half a day, I picked up a lot of good information and good ideas and stuff. And during one of the breaks, I didn't have the guts to go and talk to him. But then my mate Darryl, that you've heard from tonight, he said to me, just go and have a chat to him, see what you can find out from him. So I did, and I went up to him and asked him what he meant by giving your medal away, and I found out a lot of good things. And every word that he said, made sense to me. And he has that kind of pizzazz, I suppose you'd call it, kind of deal with him that can make a man change from the man he was to the man he wants to be. And it blew my mind. Really did. And we'll all miss him for sure.
Over 30 years ago, my son Jonathan went to Queensland for as a youth worker and was working in a congregation there. And in that time, he met some of Ian's boys, and they got close together. It was the first time Jonathan was away from home. First time that one of my sons was away too, so we were a little bit concerned about him, but we were very happy with the company we found out that he was keeping. Watto took Jonathan under his wing, and they had a great relationship right through Watto's life. So I'd like to say thank you to Watto for what he did for our family. I'm so sorry that Jonathan wasn't able to be with us tonight.